Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
He would get mad at me if I felt the way about what he said, because he always used to say, don't let some guy that lives in the house, live in their mom's basement, determine how you feel. So I'm not going to let a guy who plays golf all day determine how I feel.
How about that? Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports, now known as Visit Tuscaloosa. Visit Tuscaloosa.com. I'm Gary Harris alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. You heard just a few seconds ago and saw Alabama offensive guard Tyler Booker responding to a question about his former head coach Nick Saban picking Georgia and Texas to play in the SEC championship game this December and not the Crimson Tide. SEC Media Days went on last week at the Omni Dallas Hotel. This is the first time Dallas has, of course, ever hosted SEC Media Days, and that has everything to do with Texas and OU coming into the league. Now, Coach Debor did his thing at Media Days with the man he succeeded as head coach at Alabama, Nick Saban, on hand, looking on as part of the SEC network coverage. Debor, though, just as cool as a cucumber. He brought quarterback Jalen Milroe, offensive guard Tyler Booker, who you heard from, safety Malachi Moore were the three representatives for Alabama that Coach brought to the SEC Media Days. Now, this is a new era for the SEC, as I alluded to. Along with Nick Saban retiring, the conference is expanding to 16 teams with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. And, Rodney, let's get to the preseason media poll. Not that it matters. And the good news is we are wrong a lot more than we are right. But Georgia got 165 votes as the SEC champion. Texas got 27, which is a big gap right there. And then Alabama, just 12 votes. I will say, in the interest of transparency, I voted for Alabama to win the SEC championship. So I was one of the 12. Again, not that it means anything, but clearly the perception is that Georgia, by far the best team, and Texas the second best team in the SEC.
Yeah, and I don't think it was really any surprise. That's kind of what has been discussed, I think, leading up to SEC Media Days, probably since the end of last season, Gary, with knowing that Texas is coming to the SEC, obviously Oklahoma as well, but that those would probably be the two teams preseason-wise that most people would lean towards. You know, you got a big transition with Alabama. You're changing coaches. You're going from the greatest of all time, the GOAT, as they call him, and, you know, you're bringing in a new coach. So there's a big transition here, a lot of unknowns about Alabama. So I'm not really surprised. I guess in some ways, Gary, I am a little surprised they even got 12 votes.
Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, all returning quarterbacks, all had very successful seasons, and now they come back to lead their teams. We'll get to the SEC preseason predictions for the all-conference teams in a moment, but just those three quarterbacks. Do you give one team the edge at QB over the others, or do you think, man, all these guys are really good?
No, I mean, I think all of them are really good when you look at their fits for what they do offensively. You look at Beck at Georgia. I mean, obviously he's got that year under his belt now. I think he's, you know, certainly ready to take a big jump. Quinn Ewers, the question is on him, Gary, is really can he stay healthy? And I think when you look at Jalen Milroe, look, I think last year was a huge experience for him, and I think the transition with this offense with Kalen Deboer, Nick Sheridan, I think it's gone really smoothly thus far. Looking for a big season from him as well.
All right, Tyler Booker, Deontay Lawson, James Burnip, and Neelan Hibbett, first team All-SEC preseason by the media. Proctor, Brailsford, Nicholson, and Smith, second team, and then Milroe, Haynes, Roberts, Keenan, Campbell, Jackson, and Sabb, third team. All right, we saw Kirby Smart. What is it about Georgia? Alabama beat Georgia last year in the SEC championship game to win the SEC title. Georgia didn't make the playoff. What is it about Georgia that you think has the media not only picking them, but really, you know, overwhelmingly picking Georgia as the best team in this league?
Well, there's probably a lot of factors. I mean, obviously, Alabama snapped their 29-game winning streak. You know, they're 29 out of the last, I guess 30 out of their last 31 games, they've won. They've only lost to one team in the last, 3 years? And that's it, about 4 years it's been Alabama. So, I mean, you know, obviously they're the team where they won back-to-back 2 of the last 3 national championships. Kirby Smart is there. He's got his program entrenched. And Alabama's in transition. You know, Texas is, like you said, a very popular pick as well. They had Sark's best year last year. They've got a lot of guys returning. So you can really understand why those are the picks when you look at it from what's returning and kind of the program that Kirby Smart has built there.
Rodney, Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC, 16 teams, no divisions, but maybe the biggest story was Nick Saban, still at Media Days this year in the role as an analyst for the SEC Network, of course, ESPN. It seemed like almost every coach that went to the podium made sure they paid tribute to Nick Saban. He's still an overwhelming figure in this league, even though he's no longer coaching.
Yeah, he is, and obviously, but at the same time, Gary, I think watching him, the things he added there on the set from a coaching perspective, and how he views things and his delivery, I thought he did an outstanding job. He added so much to to the conversation there on the segments that they had with him.
All right, let's get to coach talk, and it involves Nick Saban and Kalen Deboer, the new Alabama head coach, and the former Crimson Tide head coach, of course, as we've been talking about at Media Days last week. Now, Coach Saban was there as part of the SEC's network coverage, so he was asked a question about Alabama, whether or not he thought they would finish in the top 2. We'll get to that. But Coach Deboer was asked about following Saban's Hall of Fame run. And he was asked about the differences. But he also wanted to talk, Coach Deboer did, about the similarities that the two share as coaches.
I mean, every coach is different, right? We all have different personalities. We all go, have our styles, and especially when you've been doing it for a while, in this profession, you kind of have the things that you really like to do and favor. But in the end, the most important things, I think a lot of those are probably pretty similar more than they're different. Pouring into the guys and helping them and pushing them to be their best, holding them accountable and expecting a high level of discipline while also trying to build a brotherhood and a family that exists through great team chemistry to be great on the football field when it matters most.
Coach Deboer, one of 3 coaches new at their school in the SEC this year, joining Jeff Levy at Mississippi State and Mike Elko at Texas A&M. Of course, Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league, but their head coaches, Venables and Sark, of course, were there last year. Deboer confirming that offensive coordinator Nick Sheridan will call the plays, and they are very familiar with each other and feel like that will work well. Wide receivers coach Jamarcus Shepard will carry the title as co-offensive coordinator. He was on the Husky staff at Washington, as was Sheridan last year. All right, let's get to Deboer and Saban from this standpoint. Rodney, I kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit earlier. Nick Saban, in his role as an analyst, was asked on the set who he was picking for the SEC championship game. He said right away it's way too early to even be talking about that, but that's his job. He was asked. He picked Georgia and he picked Texas. He said that he thought that those two were a little bit ahead of everybody else. He thinks Alabama's going to have a really good team. I've been asked a lot on my radio show this week, was he doing that to take pressure off Deboer? Was he doing that to motivate Alabama? I don't see it that way. I think Nick Saban pours into this job just like he does as a head coach. He's an analyst. He was asked a question. He said what he believed. That's the way I see it. What about you?
No, well, look, again, we get back to what we talked about earlier. Yeah, you can understand that pick. I mean, Georgia and Texas, certainly you can understand that pick based on the players that they have, the programs that they have right now. But at the same time, I do think there was probably, and I do believe it was an honest pick, but at the same time, I do think it helps Deboer that he picked Georgia and Texas. I think it takes a little bit of the onus off of Deboer, a little bit of the pressure, but I don't think necessarily that Nick Saban planned it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it takes a little pressure off him, but no, I don't think he planned it that way at all. I think in his job, he will do the job that he's asked to do, and I think that's what he did. He was asked, put on the spot a little bit. He picked those two teams. He said Alabama's going to have a good team. And I do know this as well. This is a fact. Kalen Deboer is 104-12 as a head coach, so he knows how to win. Granted, this is different than any place he's ever coached, including Washington, Rodney, but winners win. And I think the expectation of Alabama fans is that Alabama's going to win big this year.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you look at what Nick Saban has left, I think, and again, you match the track record that Kalen Deboer has for winning, there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some adjustments. There always is adjustments when you have such a big transition in that first year. But the one thing about Kalen Deboer, Gary, if you go back and you look at his track record and you talk to people that know him, is that he has done a great job of managing the things that he has to manage to make the adjustments to be successful.
And he's inheriting a really strong roster. Maybe on paper not as strong as Georgia or Texas, but not far behind, I can tell you that. Well, still to come on TITV, we've got the latest intel on recruiting. Coach Deboer getting set to host his first Champions Cookout as the Alabama head coach. Rodney will break down who we're expecting to be there. Also, a way for the program to pay tribute to former Crimson Tide head coach Nick Saban. I think it's pretty cool. Some other fans not so happy about the naming of Saban Field. We'll have the latest on that. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Right there, the phone number as always. And we've had some phone issues. I'm told they're working just fine. 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV will return right after this break. On Friday, the University of Alabama Board of Trustees unanimously approved naming the field at Bryant-Denny Stadium Saban Field. The ceremony dedicating Saban Field will be held on September 7th at halftime of Alabama's home game against South Florida. Now, during the virtual meeting, trustees unveiled renderings of the new signage that will be placed inside and outside the stadium. You're looking at it now. Nick Saban retired earlier this year after 17 seasons as the Crimson Tide head coach, bringing home 6 national championships and 9 SEC titles. Welcome back into TITV, presented by Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. I like this. I like Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. You know me, I'm not a big on revisionist history. Yeah, George Denny may not mean a lot to a lot of people now, but George Denny earned that spot on that stadium. Coach Bryant earned that spot. It's Bryant-Denny Stadium. I don't think you just start taking people's name off the stadium because they lived 100 years ago. I think Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium has a great ring to it. I think the Sabans are happy with it. And I know a lot of people have said, well, you don't ever mention the field. I think this one you will. I think the way it rolls off the tongue, Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium, is better. Some people had even suggested adding it and making it Bryant-Denny Saban Stadium. I like Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah, I like the flow of it. I think it's great. I think when you look at those images there that we saw, Gary, the Saban Field is very prominently exposed there. I'm looking forward to how the broadcasts are going to introduce that. Saban Field, welcome to Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think that's my expectation. When you look at those images, though, and you see it prominently there, I think that looks fantastic. I think when you walk inside the stadium, as you're going into the stadium over all the tunnels, Gary, you'll see Saban Field. So it's very prominent. I think it looks fantastic, and I think it adds a lot to it.
And I think the fact that it's Saban Field resonates as well. It's not Nick Saban Field, because I think Coach and Miss Terry go together.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And by being Saban Field, it represents both of them. All right, let's get to the Champions Cookout coming up this weekend. Big recruiting weekend for the class of 2026. Of course, a lot of the 2025 commitments will be there. There may be some other surprise visitors, but this is a big opportunity for Alabama to show out. I love the name that's been for a while, Champions Cookout. A lot of people have cookouts. This is a Champions Cookout. A lot of 2026 recruits are going to be in town, Rod.
You know, I think, Gary, obviously you're going to have a lot of your commitments, top commitments, to be able to get them back on campus. I think it's fantastic, guys, that you have for the 2025 class, but you mentioned 2026. I mean, you've got Anthony Jones, who's one of the top players in the country, certainly in the state of Alabama, from down at St. Paul's Episcopal. He'll be one of the top kind of outside backer type guys. Xavier Griffin from over in Gainesville, Georgia. He's a guy, again, a lot of people think Georgia is going to be the team to beat early on, but getting him on campus, he's one of the top linebackers in the country for that class. Ryder Lyons is a great quarterback from out in California that they have coming in. So you're right, Gary. It's a really outstanding opportunity to get the young players here and get them exposed to the campus very quickly.
As we said, 2025 commitments, a lot of them are expected to be here, but there could be a 2025 recruit or two that show up, including A.K. Deere, Kalen Deboer, the running back from Quitman, Mississippi.
It would be great if he showed up, and again, we're still waiting on him to pull the trigger and commit to Alabama, which is what we've expected. One of the best running backs, maybe the best running back in the 2025 class, as you noted, out of Quitman, Mississippi, was originally committed to Ole Miss, and I'm not going to say I don't expect it. I just don't know what Khalid Lockett has planned potentially. Gary, if he were to show up, that would certainly be big news. He's a 5-star receiver out of the state of Texas. I don't know that's going to happen, or don't necessarily think that's going to happen. But if that did happen, it would certainly be big news, because he has a decision coming up on August the 7th between most likely Alabama or Texas.
Alabama's having a marvelous summer on the recruiting trail, but there is some concern from Bama fans about in-state recruiting. Derek Smith out of Selma, reading on the sites that maybe he's an Auburn lean now. What do you know?
Well, again, he may be going to their Big Cat weekend that they have when they're hosting a lot of prospects. Certainly, potentially, that could be true. He's a guy that plays wide receiver and safety. And, they've been working hard to flip him. Gary, they flipped Perry Thompson last year.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see what happens.
That would be a blow, but we'll see. Again, it could go back and forth several times with some of these guys. Rodney, I want to ask you about a rule that's going into effect. June, of course, huge recruiting month on the calendar. In July, you're having, of course, the Champions Cookout right before you get to fall practice. NCAA rule that goes into effect on August 1st will move the dead period up, beginning of 1 month. So next year, July, will be a dead period. What happens with the Champions Cookout and the recruiting calendar because of that?
Well, I think, you look at they've been in a dead period here recently. You just
but it'll extend through.
You'll just adjust whatever you want to do. Maybe they make it at the end of June, would be my guess, because you're starting fall camp in early August, or like this year, it's late July. But they'd probably just move the cookout up a bit, maybe to June.
And of course, for the latest on recruiting information, go to TiderInsider.com. Rodney will keep you up to date on all that's going on this weekend with the Champions Cookout. Still to come on TITV, former Crimson Tide golfer Nick Dunlap. It was won as an amateur on the PGA Tour, then it got a little rocky. Now he's won as a professional, and that makes history. He's done something nobody else has ever done in the history of the PGA Tour. We'll get to that story, and we'll be taking your phone calls, your emails, and we can even get to a tweet. If you tweet at us, we'll be looking for that as well on, I guess it's X. Twitter, X, Twix, whatever you want to call it. We'll look for it. But hopefully the phone lines are going to be fine this week. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation, and we'll be right back. 205-348-9882 is the number. Nick Dunlap, some special. He won the Barracuda Championship on Sunday out in the on the Lake Tahoe, California side of Lake Tahoe, and he makes PGA Tour history, becoming the first player ever to win a PGA Tour event as an amateur and a professional in the same season. They used the modified Stableford scoring system. He went into the final round 9 points off the lead, but a 55-foot eagle on 15 and a birdie on 17, and he winds up scoring 49 points total, 19 on the final day, and he gets the win, and he's the first rookie to win 2 tour events since Xander Schauffele, who happened to win the Open Championship on Sunday, too, over at Royal Troon. But Nick Dunlap, 20 years old, he is going to be something special, already is, on the PGA Tour. All right, welcome back into Tider Insider TV, presented by Visit Tuscaloosa with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris, and it's time to head out to our phone lines, and Rick is in Brent. Rick, I'm giving you the thumbs up because I think everything's going to go off without a hitch tonight. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Hey, double thumbs up, man. We got you.
Yes. I was wondering what 2 players are we going to miss on the offense and defense? Is it Bond and Downs?
Ronnie?
Yeah, obviously Caleb Downs is a huge loss. He certainly might be the best safety in the country, one of the top players in the country. Obviously you're losing Bond. I think you can replace Isaiah Bond myself. I think they've got a really good wide receiver core. Jamarcus Shepard going to do a fantastic job there. Obviously they lost some other guys as well. Amari Nyblack I thought was a really good H-back tight end. But I'm going to tell you, Rick, I'm going to give you a name that I think is a really key, potentially a key loss, Trey Amos. Yeah. Because I think when you look at that cornerback spot, what we saw out of him in that SEC championship game and the times that he played last year, I thought he was going to blossom this year and be a top-notch corner. When you lose 2 guys like they lost with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terry Arnold, to have a guy like Trey Amos that would have stepped in, maybe with Damani Jackson, that would have been really big. But at the same time, we know that they've got some more transfers. Deshaun Jones, we know that they've got some really fantastic freshmen that are really talented that hopefully will pick up that slack.
All right, phone lines are working, so give us a call, 205-348-9882. We can get to more phone calls. We've got our email question of the day coming up as well. Keep it dialed in right here to TITV. TITV continues with our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to your heating and air conditioning needs, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. Any chance that Ryan Williams and Jalen Mbakwe will play both ways? That's from Todd in Northport. I think it's a cool question because Jalen Mbakwe is projected as a corner, but he was a dynamic offensive player in high school. Ryan Williams is projected as a receiver, but he was a dynamic athlete, and maybe some people are thinking he could play corner. Ronnie, I'll let you take that. I doubt it, but I know that you can rule anything out when you're talking about two athletes of this caliber.
Yeah. Look, I'd say this. I think Mbakwe is going to be a corner, and he's a potential kick return guy. I think Ryan Williams, same thing. Wide receiver, potential kick return, punt return guy. So maybe that's how they would be kind of two-way players. I doubt they would play on both sides of the ball. You have a lot of quality athletes in those positions.
All right. Thanks for that email. And what are we doing? Okay. Let me know. All right. Let's go to another email question. And this one is going to be from Nancy in Trussville. How much longer do you think that Patrick Murphy will coach? Of course, he's the head softball coach. I don't know. I mean, he loves coaching. I think that's all he's really ever done. They made it to the Women's College World Series last year, but yet I think he feels like that the season as a whole, especially in conference, was not up to Alabama standards. They had a losing record in conference play. So I think they're bringing in a lot of transfers. They're bringing in a solid recruiting class. I think he's probably invigorated, Rodney, as far as the future.
He's still young. I mean, he's still got a lot left in him, in my opinion. So I'd say as long as he wants.
All right. Thanks for the phone calls. Thanks for the email. We're going to come back and wrap up this edition of Tider Insider TV, and we'll do that right after this. He's been around a while now, but let me tell you, there aren't many wide receivers in the NFL better than Amari Cooper. Adam Schefter from ESPN, Diana Rossini of The Athletic reporting that he avoided a holdout by restructuring his deal. He didn't get an extension, but he is going to get a $10 million signing bonus. He's going to get paid this final year of his contract in full. That signing bonus will be paid up front, obviously, and he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of the season, but this gets him into camp. He'll make a lot of money this year, and if he has a big year, which I think he could wind up playing somewhere else next season with the Browns. Wanted to get him into camp, and he's a key for their team. They think they've got a really quality team there in Cleveland. All right, that is going to do it for this week's edition of TITV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We are going to remind you that you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or anytime at WVUA23.com, and we are going to leave you tonight with that big EA Sports Jalen Milroe hosting that video game 25 release this past Saturday at the McDonald Hughes Center. He said he's not a great video game player, but he had a lot of fun out there. We'll see you next week on TITV.